Hi, David Day here. A few weeks ago, I made a video that talked about how I made a texturized surface that I could use to create texture photographs to incorporate into my ICM images. And that surface is nothing more than a burlap bag that has a fair amount of spackling compound on top of it that was then spray painted gray. And I use it here in my studio with lighting at various angles to create a lot of highlight and a lot of dark areas that produce really good images for creating texture overlays for my photographs. But since I made that video, a number of people have asked me about how I use the images that I create here in my photographs. So that's what today's video is about. I might mention before we start the actual instruction that I have eliminated music from the video. I don't know about you, but when I'm trying to learn something on a YouTube video, I find the music in the background to be a bit of a distraction, so I've eliminated that here today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the video.
What I'm going to do today is walk you through a number of slides to demonstrate how to take an image that is a good texture candidate, in this case image A, and convert it into a texture overlay that is depicted in image B. Then, after this texture overlay is completed, I'm going to show how that image can be used to transform a finished image, in this case image C, into an entirely new image D using the many blending options available in Adobe Photoshop. Although this process sounds complicated at first, once you have taken the time to convert several images into texture overlays, I think you'll find the process to be easy and straightforward. Let's get started. Here the image that I want to convert into a texture overlay has been imported into Adobe Photoshop. Our objective with this image is to convert it into a mostly black and white overlay, and that is going to take several steps. To begin the conversion, the first thing I do is send the image into Camera Raw for some initial basic adjustments. Camera Raw can be activated through Photoshop's menu bar by selecting File, Camera Raw Filter, or through the keyboard shortcut Shift-Control-A. Once the image is in Camera Raw, I want to adjust the exposure, contrast, highlights, and shadows, followed by an adjustment of the texture, clarity, and dehaze sliders to begin the process of enhancing contrast and moving the image toward the end result of a black and white image with lots of contrast and few mid-gray tones. When the adjustments here are completed, click OK to send the image back to Photoshop. After the image is returned to Photoshop from Camera Raw, and before I proceed with further adjustments, I usually denoise my image at this point using Topaz Denoise. You can use whatever denoise methods you're familiar with. The reason for denoising is so that once the overlay is blended into another image, I do not want to accidentally add noise to the final image. Since I am striving for only blacks and whites in my final image that will be used as a texture overlay, I will desaturate the image at this point. From the menu bar of Photoshop, select Image Adjustments, Desaturate, or use the shortcut keys of Shift-Control-U. Once the desaturation is completed, the image is reduced to an array of monochrome tones going from complete black to complete white. In the Layers toolbar, right-click on the background layer name and select Duplicate Layer to create an exact overlay of the original image. If the Layers toolbar is not present in your version of Photoshop, just click the Layers tab and it will appear. Next, using the same duplication process described in the previous slide, create a second layer of the original image. Once this is done, you should see the base image with the two duplicates stacked on the top of it within the Layers tab. Notice that the background and two duplicate layers have an icon that looks like an eyeball to the left of them in the Layers tab. Click on the icon associated with the top layer to turn it off, and make sure that the middle layer is then selected. Again, making sure that the middle layer is selected, from the Photoshop menu bar, click Filter, Blur, Average. The result will look like this, basically a gray screen with no features. In the next step, we will add some features to this base to build the intensity of the final texture overlay. Remember the icon where we turned the top layer off? Click on the box containing that icon to turn the top layer back on. Then make certain that the top layer is selected for the next step. After making sure that the top layer is selected, from the menu bar in Photoshop, click Filter, Other, High Pass. When the high pass filter is selected, a pop-up menu will appear that allows you to change the amount of high pass highlights that appear in the image. Moving the slider to the left decreases the effect, while moving it to the right increases the effect. Here I have moved the slider from a 40 pixel radius to a 140 pixel radius. Comparing this to the previous slide, you can see where this change has brought out a lot of texture that will be used in the final overlay image. Now, to further enhance the contrast in the image, go to the Layers panel and again making sure that the top layer is selected, click on the drop-down menu that is labeled Normal. When this drop-down menu is activated, you will see a menu that contains Photoshop's blending modes. Click on the mode labeled Linear Light. If the linear light blend produces an image that has too much contrast for your taste, select the opacity option just to the right of the blending options drop-down menu on the Layers tab and back off of the opacity just a little bit. At this point, we're very close to completing the texture overlay image. So now it's time to merge the background image with the two copies that were made of it and then modified. To do this, from Photoshop's menu bar, select Layer, Flatten Image. After the layered image has been flattened, it's time to adjust the levels within the image to compress the two black and whites and eliminating the gray areas. To do this, from Photoshop's menu bar, select Image, Adjustment, Levels. When the Levels option is selected, a new pop-up menu will appear that allows you to compress the tones within the image to eliminate the gray areas. Note the three sliders at the bottom of the Levels histogram that allow the highlights, midtones, and shadows to be manipulated. The goal here is to move all three sliders toward the peak area of the histogram to eliminate as many gray tones as possible. Here you can see that I moved the shadows and highlights sliders toward the center of the histogram. I then moved the midtone slider to the right to compress the gray tones away from black and towards white. This results in a fairly well balanced black and white image. If I want more black and less white, the midtone slider would have been moved to the left toward the shadows slider. Now I'm going to talk about a step that is optional. Sometimes the levels adjustment results in more gray tones than are acceptable in the final overlay image. When that is the case, the image can be forced into just black and white by using the threshold option. To do this, from Photoshop's menu bar, select Image, Adjustments, Threshold. Selecting the threshold option will bring up a new pop-up menu that forces the image to be just a mix of black and white. In this image, I wanted to further suppress the whites, so I moved the threshold slider to the left. After applying the threshold adjustment, some of the white areas returned in the image. It is important to know that Photoshop does have its limits. In images that are highly modified, the output may not always be exactly what you want, resulting in some compromise in the final image. Here is another optional step. Some Photoshop users like to have both the inverted and original texture overlay images saved on their hard drives for future use. If the image that is being overlaid has a lot of dark or light areas within it, sometimes the inverted image will provide for a better overall blend than the original texture image. Before inverting the images, save the original to your hard drive. Then from the Photoshop menu bar, select Image, Adjustment, Invert, or with the shortcut keys, Control-I. This will invert the image that can then be saved with a new name to the hard drive. Here is the inverted image where the blacks have become white and the whites have become black. The inverted image will have an entirely different effect than the original overlay when used to provide texture to a photograph. So that's basically it. In the next few slides I will show you how to use the texture overlays we just made to create an entirely new and unique image from one that already exists. This is an intentional camera movement image I recently made of a ping pong ball sitting on top of some dried contoured spackling compound. Let's see what we can do with it by adding our texture layer to it. The first step in the overlay operation is to get my texture image copied so I can place it on top of the ping pong ball image. With the texture image active from Photoshop's menu bar, choose Select All, or with the shortcut keys, press Control-A. This will place a moving marquee around the entire texture image. Next, from the menu bar, select Edit Copy, or using the shortcut keys, press Control-C. This will copy the entire texture image onto your computer's clipboard. Now I am going to make the image I want to texturize, the active image in Photoshop. In this case it is my ping pong ball. From Photoshop's menu I will select Edit Paste, or using the shortcut keys press Ctrl-V. This will place the texture overlay on top of the image I wish to texturize. When I pasted the texture image on top of my ping pong ball, a couple of things happened. First, looking at the Layers panel, you can see that the new layer, the texture image, has been added as a layer and labeled Layer 1. The second thing you will notice is that the texture image is way too big to fit appropriately on top of the underlying ping pong ball image. Here's how we go about fixing it. The first thing to do is verify that the Layer 1 image, which is the texture layer, has been selected by verifying that a white frame appears around it in the Layers panel. Then, in Photoshop's menu bar, select Edit, Free Transform, or Ctrl-T if using the shortcut keys. This will place a box with handles around the texture layer. By grabbing these handles with the mouse, the texture layer can be resized. By pressing Shift while performing this function, the texture layer will be resized in only one direction at a time, and this allows you to distort a texture layer as you shrink or expand it. Here we see the texture layer after I resized it to fit roughly over the background layer, which in my case is the ping pong ball. Also note that it is possible to move the texture layer around with the mouse to get it positioned exactly where you want over the background layer. This option is available anytime prior to flattening the image down to a single layer. As we previously did in building the texture image, the next step is to blend the texture layer with the background image. When the texture layer is active, you can select a blending option from the drop-down menu in the Layers panel titled Normal. When selected, this brings up all Photoshop's blending options. It's fun to experiment with the different blending options, as sometimes more than one option will provide an interesting new image. In this case, I preferred the Overlay option. If the texture on the blended image is too harsh, the problem can be corrected by adjusting the opacity of the texture layer from within the Layers panel. In this case, I felt the 100% opacity level produced a good result, so I didn't change it. Finally, when everything is to your liking, select Layer, Flatten Image from Photoshop's menu bar. The image is now ready to be saved. As a side note, and this isn't something that too many Photoshop users know about, is that occasionally when an image is flattened, it can change dramatically in color and brightness. This was not an issue in this image, but if you should experience it, the solution is often to make the texture layer the background layer and paste the image you wish to texturize on top of it, followed by blending. Sometimes Photoshop's blending options can act in unwanted ways, and reversing the layering order can provide an acceptable fix. So these are the steps in making your own texture layers and incorporating them into your photographs. I would like to reiterate that for those just starting out with the texturizing of images, the process may seem a bit complex. But once you work your way through it a few times, I think you will find that it is very easy to build a library of your own unique textures to use in your photographs. What we have covered here today is also explained in detail in my next book, The Emotional Residue of Dreams. The launch date is set for May 1st, 2026, and it includes a detailed study on dreams and their impact on our everyday lives, along with a lot of information on how I make my unique images. It will be available through Amazon in both ebook and softcover formats. In the meantime, please take a few minutes to check out some of my recent work at ddayicmart.com or through the QR code provided here.